So one of the first steps towards combating rape culture and addressing sexual assault is understanding what the term means. And a lot of people, when they think about sexual assault, they automatically think of the word rape. But the word rape was actually removed from the criminal code in Canada in 1983. And now what's used instead is the term sexual assault.
Sexual assault is any form of non-consensual sexual contact. So it's a really broad crime. It can include kissing, fondling, penetration, anal or vaginal. It can include oral sex. It means any form of sexual contact that does not have consent.
Although the term rape can include sexual assault, it's actually a little bit different, and it's the term that is used in Canada. But each survivor still has the right to choose which term feels right for them and how they want to define their own experience.
When it comes to sexual assault, the media tends to present a very stereotypical image of what perpetrators look like. They're usually the lurking stranger who looks sort of scary or creepy. Maybe they drive around in a rusty old van, and they certainly act in ways that are very different from the way we and our friends act. But in reality, this isn't the case. People are more often assaulted by someone that they knew and trusted. This is what is referred to as an acquaintance sexual assault. The term acquaintance can refer to someone the survivor hardly knows, like a friend of a friend, or to someone the survivor's close with, like their partner. This goes to show that people who commit sexual assault can be anyone, any gender, any age, and though they can be strangers, they're far more likely to be acquaintances.
When we're talking about sexual assault, one of the most important topics to talk about is consent. So consent is an ongoing, voluntary, and conscious agreement to engage in sexual activity. So in other words, it's having sex because you actually want to have sex. But this means that consent or a yes that's obtained through coercion is not voluntary.
So coercion is often used in situations where two people know each other, and when one person forces another person to give in or submit to doing something that they didn't want to do. And coercion is often in the form of pressure, threats, or intimidation.
For example, someone might pressure someone by repeatedly asking and not taking no for an answer. And I don't mean asking your partner and checking in again afterward to see if they've changed their mind. That's natural communication. This is about someone asking again and again and again, 10, 20 times until the other person submits. In terms of threats, something we often hear about is blackmail. For instance, imagine someone is in a same-gender relationship who hasn't told some of the people in their life about their orientation. Well, the other person might use that information as leverage to get their partner to do something sexual that they don't want to do. Sometimes coercion involves intimidation, where one person purposefully causes the other to fear them by doing something like punching a wall or making violent gestures and remarks in order to make the person go along with what they want. When a person is being coerced, they may find themselves doing something called bargaining down. For example, when someone realizes they're going to be forced into some sort of penetrative act, they may try and bargain down to something they feel would be less traumatic for them, like using their hand or their mouth instead. This doesn't mean they wanted to do the less traumatic thing. It's just the lesser of two evils, and it's still sexual assault. Unfortunately, the power of coercion is that it often leaves the survivor wondering if they actually consented to the sexual activity in the end. But consent has to be voluntary, and submitting or giving in under coercive techniques is not giving voluntary consent.
Free voluntary agreement is just the basic definition of consent. It's really important for us to have a thorough understanding of what consent means. And the criminal code actually goes into quite a bit of detail, laying out the definition of consent in ways that we might not have thought about before. More specifically, the criminal code specifies situations that do not constitute consent.
The first situation in the criminal code says that there is no consent if someone else says yes. Simply put, it means you can't consent for me, and I can't consent for you. The next point says there's no consent if it is obtained through the abuse of a position of power, trust, or authority. Some examples of people who could abuse their positions in this way would be a boss, teacher, coach, babysitter, someone in law enforcement. The third point says that there is no consent if one person does not say yes or says or implies no through words or behaviors. This means that someone could verbally imply no, either directly or indirectly. For example, saying things like, "Not right now," "I have a partner," or even, "I have a headache," are all ways of implying no. Someone could also imply no through their behaviors by doing things like turning away, trying to keep their clothes on, or just being in shock and completely freezing up. The fourth situation in which there's no consent is if one person is not capable of giving consent, if they're unconscious or sleeping, highly intoxicated or high. Most people understand a person can't consent if they're sleeping or unconscious, and the same goes if someone has had so much to drink that they're stumbling around, getting sick, passing in and out of consciousness. And finally, the last situation outlined by the criminal code says there is no consent if someone changes their mind. So we all have the right to change our minds before or during any sexual activity, even if we've previously said yes.
So at the end of the day, consent is about respecting our partner's wishes and making sure that we're checking in with the person that we're with before sexual contact and then throughout any sexual activity as well. And making sure that we respect any boundaries that they set, regardless of how much we might want to have sex.
Although it may seem simple, understanding exactly what sexual assault is and understanding how consent and coercion operate in the real world can be so important because it helps shape and change the ways that we think and react around the issue of sexual assault.